So, a few of you guys have chimed in and asked me a very obvious question. In my opinion, does Trey Sermon and LaMichael Perine solve the Eagles' issues with contact bounce back? That specific need of what a lot of people are deeming the 4-minute offense stuff. Basically, can we close games out with this particular running back group when we gain the lead? Let's talk about it, guys. What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, Division Rivals? This is Steven Hyder, Gate City Sports Channel. Sports Channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. Hey, what's good, guys? This may be your first, second, third time you caught my content and you enjoyed today's discussion. And we are almost at 6,300 subscribers. We're on a journey towards 7,500. So if you enjoyed today's content, I would love to add you to the cerebral football community. We just need you to subscribe to do that. To my OG subscribers, here's what I'm going to ask you to do, guys. Hit that like button, smash the thumbs up button, help me spike the algorithm and get this in front of new people that we can potentially convert into our little community here on YouTube. All right, y'all. Today's topic. I had to go back. And take a really good look at LaMichael Perine and then take a good look at Trey Sermon's college numbers and get a feel for who they were, right? There's not a whole lot to go off of their NFL career, guys. I mean, there's just not a big body of work here to really break down. So I really needed to go back, take a look at a little bit of their film, take a look at some of the underlying advanced analytics, and get a feel for what they are. And I want to start off with, number one, the guy who's on the practice squad, the guy who might be the underlying kind of conversation to today's topic, which is LaMichael Perine. Because I do think that if you're specifically talking about LaMichael Perine and what he would be in the NFL, I would personally consider him to be a contact balance running back. The reason being is, guys, it's in the details of the numbers, it's in the utilization, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I hate the fact that you can't see boxes on like PFF. I can't see 8-man boxes, 7-man boxes. I can't tell how often teams stack the box against particular running backs to give me a little bit better feel, right? Because the numbers I'm going to report to you today, so we talk about things like yards after contact and, first down ratios and all that kind of stuff. Sure, they give us an idea if a guy can break tackles, but you can break tackles without being a power back, right? I mean, you could just be elusive, and if a guy tries to arm tackle you, you're breaking away from him that way, or you're breaking a dude's ankles, if you will. So, I mean, there's different ways of achieving this, and you can look at something like your YCO per attempt marker, and yeah, it just means that they can break tackles. It doesn't tell you exactly how they're doing it. But with LaMichael Perine, one of the things that I did to kind of narrow this down was look at breakaway yards, right? I mean, it's not perfect, it's not complete per se, but you can tell if a guy's got a tremendous amount of breakaway yards that he's probably more of the elusive type, right? We can look at his elusive rating, and then we can kind of compare what that YCO per attempt says compared to the breakaway yards and get a better feel for, okay, is this just a dude he's got the wiggle, he's got the shake. Well, when you look at LaMichael Perine, I don't think that's the case, guys. I mean, simply put, he forced 24 missed tackles. So, I mean, yeah, he can make you miss. I mean, no doubt about it, but it's not his game. Runs over 10 yards, 21. Runs over 15 yards, 7. That's the one that tells me, like, okay, this is probably more of a get down there, get the dirty, yards and get it over with. In terms of the big stat of what we're looking for, which is YCO per attempt, right? Yards after contact per attempt, 3.73 yards, which ranked 50th overall back in 2019, which would have been, I think, his last season in college football, guys. When I look at other markers, right, like I said before, breakaway yards, how many did he have? 246 total breakaway yards. Where does that rank on the spectrum of, like, percentages? What percentages of his rushing yards did breakaway yards account for? About 36.4%. There's some ability there. It's not like he can't do that for you, but that's not necessarily his game, and you can see that. And when we get to Trey Sermon, you'll see there's a little bit more explosiveness to the player. So when I look at a guy like LaMichael Perine in particular, yeah, I think that is very much a contact balance back. Will he ever get the role in the Eagles? What can he do there? I mean, we'll see. I can't say what he is or isn't going to be. I'll just say that there are some things about him if I look at a situational back, like a third down running back that's strong and can go get me a yard or two. I think LaMichael Perine clearly fits that category. And then there's some sneaky things about Perine, such as like catching 41 passes on 53 targets for 270 yards and having a .95 yards per route run marker, which tells me, I mean, is this Kenneth Gainwell catching the football? No. But there's ability there. He can catch these little dump-off plays. He can be effective as a receiving back, right? So you're not necessarily tipping your hand per se. But I think the most important or the most impressive thing about LaMichael Perine and kind of like judging him as a third down or 4-minute offense kind of running back, what I call the closer, the guy who can close out a game, is his 81% pass block. That's what he was great at, as an 81% pass blocker. Really, really good figure. That's a really good number. That tells me that this guy could probably definitely play the role if you can get him up to speed and things kind of play themselves out to be the right opportunity for him. 100 reasons why things can go wrong, guys. But the underlying numbers tell me that, yeah, I mean, I see what the Eagles are looking at here. Let's get to Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon. A little bit more explosive of a back, guys. To begin with, 469 total yards after contact, which worked his way out to a 4.04 YCO per attempt marker. So he can make, after first contact, he can get yardage for you. That ranked 27th overall in 2020. Some big names you might recognize over the past couple of draft classes that ranked in that same area with him, right? Brian Robinson Jr. was like 24th on that, that rankings. Hassan Haskins was 13th. Tyler Algier was 6th. Jarrett Patterson from Buffalo was 5th. Bijan Robinson, guys coming out next year, was number 2 overall in that category. Damian Pierce, another Florida guy, kind of like LaMichael Perine. When Perine left, Pierce really, I think, stepped up in that role, and he was quite good. But, Pierce was ranked pretty well, too. There's some guys that fit there. We can see that Trey Sermon does have the ability to get you yards after contact. But I will say, when I looked at his film, there's some area of growth here for Trey Sermon. I think he's got to run a little bit better behind his pads. I do think there's a tendency at times for him to try to look for the breakaway play instead of using that great physical size he has and picking you up yardage. Look, a lot of dudes came into the league with this problem and ironed it out and turned into, phenomenal football players. I mean, sometimes guys get this, under control. But I will say I do think that played a role in Sermon being available, right? The fact that there's a lot of depth there in that 49ers running back room. But if we're going to talk about some of the, underlying things that could get you in trouble here, is a big back that's kind of looking for the home run shot a little too often instead of just being the big back. So that's something Sermon has to work on, but he's still a very, very young man. This is a guy that has a tremendous amount of talent, which we can see here. 33 missed tackles forced, 27 runs over 10 yards, 16 runs over 15 yards. I mean, there's some big playability to Trey Sermon, right? He's got the physical size to be kind of a feature back if you can ever get him in that role. And I'm not projecting him to be that, guys. I mean, he's got a lot to prove before we start calling this guy a feature back. But, I mean, the underlying physical measurements would lead to somebody that if he can get the game down, has the size and the ability to be a feature back. First down runs, 36. When you compare that over to 116 rushing attempts, at 36 over 116 is an impressive marker for first downs. There's some explosion to this player. By comparison, LaMichael Perine only had one less first down on 35, but he had 209 handoff attempts. So, I mean, a little different here, right? I mean, the percentages kind of tell the story there. Some other things to know here is very highly thought of pass catcher. Didn't get a lot of opportunities, only 12 of 15. So he didn't get a ton of opportunities with Ohio State. But nonetheless, 0.99 yards per route run, 95 yards off of those, 12 catches. Like, there is some ability there. Breakaway yards. This is where I think you see the big distinguishing differences between LaMichael Perine and then a guy like Trey Sermon. So, if you remember, Perine had his breakaway yard numbers were basically 246 total yards, which accounted for 36.4% of his production. However, when you look at Trey Sermon, he had 462 yards, which accounted for 53% or over half of his production, rushing production. So, Trey Sermon, a little bit more of the home run element to his game, if you will, compared to Perine. That said, hey, I'm a fan of both signings. I'm a fan of both of these guys being here. We'll see how it pans out, guys. I mean, we're definitely throwing darts at the dartboard. Clearly, Trey Sermon is a guy that had a very high draftable grade on him just the year prior. Didn't quite work out in San Francisco, and there's always an element of concern of why these things aren't working out with certain players. But given the circumstances, this is a pretty good player to pick up this late in the process, guys. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate the signing. I think Perine's also a guy that, got caught up in a numbers crunch, a guy that I still think can play a high level of football and fits a need for the Eagles on the practice squad currently that maybe gets an opportunity later in the season to actually get called up and into a rotation. But we'll see how that plays out, guys. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. I'll see y'all on the next video.